Well, hey, everybody. It is good to see you all. Like Jason said, my name is Jon Birkmire, and I get to be the associate pastor here at Anthem Church. Miss you guys. I was gone all last week, like Jason said. Had my yearly escape to the mountains, which was phenomenal. North Carolina has terrible cell reception, and I loved it. It was so funny. So every year I do this thing, one of my favorite hobbies is this thing called overlanding, where we take our four-wheel drives and we do off-road trails and we camp along the way at different places. And every year, as kind of a retreat for myself, really for my soul, to disconnect from the chaos and busyness of life. I'm sure you experience that too. And for 6-ish years now, I've been taking kind of the same group of folks on trips all over the place. And so we get to our first campsite, and everybody's like bummed that there's no cell reception. And I'm just like, this is the greatest. Because even though I can turn it off, I can't like turn it off, you know? And I just had an excuse for not responding to emails even more than I already did. It was so great. We had tons of fun, but glad to be back and to get to be a part of part 2 of this awesome series that we kicked off called the Irresistible series, which is really all about us unleashing and funding and getting behind a new mission and vision for our church and what that looks like in the future for our church. And if you were here last week, you heard Jason talk a lot about like the nuts and bolts, the very specific kind of how that we plan to accomplish and fund and fulfill what the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 to 20 years looks like for our church. And so if you're newer to Anthem, if maybe this is your first Sunday, you're here on such an awesome Sunday. I'm so glad that you're here because you're going to get a peek behind the curtain of kind of who we are. We don't want anything from you today. We just want some stuff for you. And really that's just for you to get the chance to get to know us, why we're here and like what makes us tick. And so our mission statement that we've rolled out a little bit here and there over the past couple of months is to inspire people to follow Jesus. We believe like it is the greatest mission in the entire world, and that you as a part of our church family get to be a part of that. And our vision statement, our roadmap for how we're going to do that is by being an irresistible church for our neighbors, the next generation, and the world. And so today, for part 2, I get to talk about how we are going to do that for our neighbors. And it's actually funny, as I was on my way back, came back Friday, and I knew Saturday I'd like put this time aside to like prep for my talk. I was kind of laughing because I definitely love my neighbors 90-ish% of the time, but I suffer from road rage. Does anybody else struggle with the road rage thing? Man, now I don't get grumpy in road rage situations except for one circumstance. You can cut me off, you can tailgate me, you do anything. The number one thing that gets me frustrated is rubberneckers. I can't stand it when people slow down because somebody else has stopped. Like, just keep going so none of us have to wait. You know, my family lives in Orlando. We experience this all the time on I-75. There could be like a Post-it note in the road by Ocala, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, what is that? We should all slow down. All 40,000 of us should slow down and stare at the thing. I'm like, it drives me, my wife's always like, babe, it's good. I'm like, we're getting off. You know, like you go down back roads, you know, as if that's really helpful at all. I'm so guilty of that. So on our way back Friday night, I was getting it kind of late and got off I-10 to go through Rayford. Some of you guys are familiar with the area of Rayford because I live in Newberry, so it's like the fastest way to go. And I just see all these taillights. I'm like, what is going on? Like cars and cars and cars. And I finally get up and I realize that there was a possum in the middle of the road that some lady was like trying to shoo, and all 40 cars that exist in Rayford had stopped. Like she wasn't in the road anymore, you know? And I was like, guys, I'm trying to get home right now. It's really just a confession from me to you. But I think it's human nature, right? Like I think it's human nature to be a rubbernecker, right? We all kind of be like, ooh, what disaster has this person found? You know, like there's this side of us that kind of wants to peek, you know, like at the accident or the possum lady or Post-it note, whatever the thing is. It's human nature in us to be curious. It's human nature in us to want to see, to maybe even in some cases like want to see something bad happen? Like, and don't think I'm weird in this because a lot of you watch murder shows, and I know this, okay? Some of you, you fall asleep to murder mysteries, like, and then Linda heard a knock at the door. Like, you do it, you do it, right? It's just kind of who we are. We are rubberneckers, I think, just naturally as human beings. And it's with social media and cell phones, there's like this new phenomenon in it. It's actually called the bystander effect. It's this terrible thing, actually, that's happening where like someone's worst day, like the worst thing that's ever happened to them is befalling them in this moment. And people do this thing. They take out their phone and they call 911. No, of course not. They take out their phone and they record the whole thing, It's like some old lady's getting mugged and everybody has their phones out. They're like not helping. The bystander effect is definitely a real thing. It's actually like an epidemic where people aren't first thinking, oh my gosh, I should help this person or I should call 911. They're just like, I should record this for TikTok. Like, it's just a thing that's going on. And I think it's human nature in us to see something broken or to see something bad happening and to maybe want to see it, but not know what to do with it, right? And this is really true for me. If I'm not careful, if I pay too much attention, to the news, if I pay too attention just to the stuff that's even just going on in our city, man, it can get me so down in the dumps. It can make me feel kind of hopeless and negative. And maybe that's true for you. And there's this Southern term that is not a great term, but it is a Southern term. And it can make me believe this, that like the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket. Have you ever heard this term before? Man, the whole world is just going to hell in a handbasket. And I've felt this at times over the past couple of years, like, But the problem with this idea, the problem with thinking this way, I have a friend who's a pastor, and he said this so well. He said, the moment that we believe that the whole world or that a situation has just gone to hell in a handbasket, we miss out on the opportunity to be a part of being for that situation or for those people, to be a part of being good or doing good in that situation. Like when we just have participate in the bystander effect, when we get hopeless because we just think the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket, we miss out on the opportunity to be a part of the story of redemption for whatever that thing is. But it's natural for us to not know what to do. It's natural for us when we see the things on the headlines on the news, or it's natural for us when we see the things that are going on, maybe in our own homes, or in our siblings' homes, or in our family members' homes, or just, in our city, in our neighborhoods, in our world, to just not really know what to do or how to be a part of it. And so we get hopeless, right? And we begin to reserve and like pull ourselves back and isolate. And maybe begin to believe like the whole world's just going to hell in a handbasket. There's really nothing that I can do about it. And I actually believe that's not true. I think you know that it's not true. And so that's kind of where we're going to go today is like, what do we do? How do we operate? What's the thing if we're followers of Jesus, like what is the thing that we do when we're faced with brokenness or faced with the hurt that our world carries, especially as it connects to and pertains to our neighbors? And to do that, I want to look at one of my favorite stories, firsthand accounts in the Bible. And if you've been a part of church for any period of time, you've heard this firsthand account, you've heard this story before. But today, I actually want to look at a totally different portion of it. And I grew up, going to church. I heard this story 7 trillion times, and I never ever knew the end, the end of the story. There's like 40 something verses that cover this story, and I only ever got like 30 of them. And it's the story of the woman, the Samaritan woman at the well. And so because so many of us have heard the story, I'm just going to kind of catch us up. We're not going to cover all 40 verses. The verses we are really going to dive in and look at together are the ones that maybe you've never really seen before. So just to catch you up on the story of the Samaritan woman, Jesus and the disciples, the guys that were following him, they were traveling through to a new city, and they had to pass through, begrudgingly, the city of Samaria. And the context for that is that Jewish people and Samaritans, they did not get along. There was racial differences, there was differences in their understanding of scripture and of religion. They did not like like each other. At best, they were like the Republicans and the Democrats. Grr, we can't figure this out and we hate each other. I don't know why that is. I think it's stupid. But the Samaritans and the Jewish people couldn't figure it out either, right? Anybody, you can laugh. It's cool. I know it's church. All right, so they don't like each other, right? They've got beef. They've got street wars going on, right? Maybe some of the disciples, maybe they were bullied by a Samaritan growing up. We don't really know, but they were not thrilled about it. And they were like, we don't even really want to go into Samaria. We're going to stay on the outside and see if we can actually find some food. So the disciples leave Jesus. They go to find some food. Jesus goes into the city and he hangs out at a well. And he runs into a woman, the Samaritan woman, as you know, if you know the story. And her story is a story that maybe isn't so similar from your story or some of our stories. She has struggled with infidelity. She's got some sexual decision-making that's questionable, right? She's had like 5 or 6 different husbands, right? And so Jesus has this amazing conversation with her where she's coming to the well in the middle of the day, which was not customary at all. And she was doing that because she was ostracized from her community. She's like, I'm going to go to the well the worst time of the day so that I don't have to run into the people that don't like me. She has this incredible conversation with Jesus where she's just trying to get water, and Jesus is talking about water that never runs out and eternal life and all this stuff. And by the end of it, the woman realizes that maybe, just maybe, the person that she was talking to was the Messiah, because there was no way a Jewish rabbi, which Jesus at the time was wearing his rabbinical robe, so she knew he was a rabbi, would have, one, treated her the way that he did, spoken to her the way that he did, known the things about her life, that she'd had 5 or 6 husbands and was shacked up with Ronnie at the time, right? Like, he knew all of these things about her, and then cared about her enough to spend time with her in that moment and to speak new life into her. So much so that she ditches her water pail, doesn't even get water. This is where we pick up the verse. This is John chapter 4, firsthand account for John. And this is where we're going to kind of pick up the verses together, right? So she has this incredible encounter with Jesus, and she leaves her water pail and runs into the city. And so then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to all of the people in the town, remember, these are the people that have made her life terrible for at least a good portion of her life. She goes into the city and points out that she's even there and says, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Next verse. Could this be the Messiah, she says. They came out of the town and made their way towards Jesus. Now, the very next verse starts by saying, meanwhile. So in other words, the woman goes into the city. Jesus leaves to go meet up with the disciples. She's rounding up all the villagers, right? And she's going, hey, this crazy thing happened. I need to tell you all about it. And they start to walk out of the city to find Jesus. So meanwhile, Jesus re-meets up with his disciples. And I'm adding this because I'm a visual guy, but like, it was hot. It was the middle of the day. So I just picture Jesus and the disciples sitting underneath a tree on the outskirts of the town to eat together. So meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, talking to Jesus, eat something. But Jesus, he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. The disciples go on to say this to each other. Then his disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him some food? Verses like this always give me just like a little bit of hope, right? Throughout all of the New Testament, the disciples never get what Jesus is talking about at first. And I'm like, yeah, man, me too. I get that. Jesus is like, hey, I'm trying to talk about spiritual stuff and you're always trying to focus on physical stuff. Like, they're like, wait, what are you talking about, man? Did somebody already give you, a sandwich? And Jesus is, as he's constantly trying to do with the disciples. The disciples are so focused on like their physical stuff, the circumstances that they're in the moment. And Jesus is going, hey, I'm trying to teach you why I am the way that I am and why I want you to be the way that I am, how I want you to follow me. And the way that Jesus always does it is in these like spiritual these moments where he's trying to communicate a spiritual principle in the midst of just like normal everyday life. So the very next verse says this is Jesus replying. He says, my food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months until the harvest. So again, in this moment, we'll go back to that verse really quick. In this moment, Jesus again is saying, hey, listen, I am probably hungry and I plan to eat at some point, but there's this opportunity here where I don't want you to miss a spiritual principle, a godly principle that you still don't get. He's saying, hey, my focus, and when he says my food, he's not actually talking about food. He's talking about my focus, my mission, the reason why I'm here. My focus is, yes, on my life and feeding myself, but it's on being on mission, the mission that I have been put here to do as Jesus. And so then he says, it's still 4 months until the harvest. This was like a term, I did some research on this, and it was just a term, a saying that they would use about, we've got plenty of time. We have plenty of time to get that done. So those of you, your spouse is like, hey, would you mind doing these dishes? Here's a great one-liner for you. It's still 4 months until the harvest, right? That's a great one. Try that out. All right, so back, Jesus goes on in this moment. He says, I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. Now, I don't leave this verse up here for a second. I want you to join me in like visualizing this moment. So Jesus is sitting with his disciples, many of them Jewish, on the edge of this town, a town that they want nothing to do with. In fact, a town that they avoided entirely. It would have been way easier for them to have found food inside of the town of Samaria, but they stayed on the outskirts. They went to like a food truck or something to get food. And they're sitting with Jesus underneath a tree, trying to get Jesus to eat. And Jesus goes, hey, listen, I want you to see something bigger. I want you to look past like your current circumstances, the things that you got going on. Yes, food is important. Yes, your family is important. All of these things are so important, and you should focus on them because your life matters, right? The complexities of your life, my life, they absolutely matter. But in this moment, in my mind, because it said meanwhile, Jesus turns the eyes of the disciples and goes, hey, look. And here, coming from the town, led by the Samaritan woman, are all these people the disciples wanted nothing to do with, people that the disciples had disagreements with, I'm sure. They hated them just because they were of a different race, frankly. And Jesus goes, hey. Open your eyes and look at the fields. It wasn't harvest time. There weren't fields where they were. He wasn't talking about a literal harvest. He was saying, hey, you see those people? You see that woman? You got to think, when she went into the town, the religious leaders of the Samaritan people, they're like, well, if the Messiah is here, we better go check it out for ourselves. So you've got this Samaritan woman leading the charge of all the people in the city who are coming out to see the Messiah. And Jesus goes, hey, I know you have your opinions about these people. I know you have your hangups, and I know you're just hungry. But I'm trying to help you see something bigger. I want to change the way that you understand what I'm here to do. Yes, food is important. Yes, your job is important. Yes, all of these things are important. But I want to change the way that you see your neighbors. And in that moment, Jesus chooses the worst of the neighbors, not just your neighbor, Larry, Gary, whoever that lives next, you kind of like him, maybe he mows your grass by accident every once in a while. No, your worst enemy. And Jesus goes, hey, I want you to see them as the harvest. Imagine that moment. Imagine what it was like for those disciples to sit under this tree with Jesus, who had just gotten done baptizing each of them a few chapters earlier. And he goes, hey, you see those folks right there? Those are my people. They're who I came for because I'm on a mission, and I want to invite you to be a part of it. Jesus was saying, hey, it's harvest time. When you see those people, when you see the Samaritans, when you see those religious leaders that you don't like, when you see the woman that's had 5 husbands and she's shacked up with Ronnie, I want you to see them differently. I want you to respond differently. I want you to think that there's an opportunity, that there's a harvest to be had. When I first stumbled on this passage, it gave me goosebumps because I'm such a visual, like when I read something, I like picture it, And I'm just like, what a moment that must have been. For all of these disciples to realize in an instant that the Savior of the world was calling them to something more, calling them to something bigger. to see their neighbor differently. We're in the middle of this amazing harvest time here at Anthem. Any farmers in the room? Anybody that grew up on a farm? How about a ranch? No? Okay. All right, so no farmers in the room, but here's what we know about farming. Here's what we know about harvest time. Once we've harvested the crop, we're going to celebrate, right? We're going to make a big deal out of it. We're in the middle of a season of celebrating an incredible harvest. There's amazing things that are happening in family ministries. There's amazing things that are happening in our church. It's a great thing. We're going to celebrate it. But also, we're aware, just like you are, of the brokenness of the world. We're aware of the brokenness in us. We're aware of the brokenness in your neighbors and in your coworkers and in your home and in your family. And so we're just not going to settle, right? We're just not going to settle with one great harvest. We're going to prepare for the next one. That's what a great farmer does, right? If you guys know anything about farming, the second that the harvest is done, they're going to celebrate the fact that they have these crops. And they're already beginning to prepare, because the winter's coming. They're going to begin to prepare for when it's time to plant new seeds for new growth. The reason why our church is where it's at right now and we're celebrating what's going on is not because of something happened 2 weeks ago, but rather because of the investment of so many of you years before. Both financially, those of you that partnered with us to build this building, those of you that give week in and week out, you're a part of the harvest. You're a part of the celebration that we get to be a part of. Some of you planted Anthem Church way back in 2008. Some of you were a part of that. You're the reason why we're harvesting now. But the stakes are high. You know that they're high because you're a bystander. We all are. We're all rubbernecking the brokenness of our world and the brokenness of our neighbors and the brokenness of our coworkers. And maybe you're like me and you don't quite know what to do. The stakes are high. And it's why we've rolled out this brand new mission statement, right? We see that culture is changing, the way that people see and think about spirituality has changed. And so we're saying, hey, we're not okay with that. And so we're on a mission to inspire people to follow Jesus. Not just believe, not just like, not just be okay with, but to follow Jesus. Our vision statement, just like I talked about at the very beginning, is to be an irresistible church to our neighbors that we're talking about today, the next generation in the world. And we're going to celebrate the fact that we're doing that now, but that we're out of room and that there's more opportunity. There's more people that need to be inspired to follow Jesus. There are more people that need you to inspire them to follow Jesus. We're going to keep being for Gainesville, but we're actually going to be something even better than that. We're going to be for our neighbors because some of you come from Chiefland, from Ocala, from Newberry, you come from all over. Our church is no longer for Gainesville. Our church is for our neighbors, for your neighbors. And here's the thing that you and I know, because it's part of our story, is that the best way to be for your neighbors is to inspire them to follow Jesus. Yes, we're going to feed our neighbors. Yes, we're going to clothe our neighbors. Yes, we're going to serve our neighbors. We're going to do all of those things. But if we do all of that, and we still don't inspire them to follow Jesus, we still don't introduce them to the very person that the Samaritan woman met at the well, like what? There's really no point in any of this. Just go start a thrift shop and give clothes away. That stuff is important and it matters, but it pales in comparison to our mission that you get to be a part of, to inspire people to follow Jesus. And here's what I believe, and I think you know because of your story, is that the best way for someone to know God is to first know someone who knows God. This is so true in each and every one of our stories. I can name the people that I knew who knew God, that helped me know him too. Here's what I don't want you to miss when it comes to the harvest, when it comes to like this moment right now, you are someone. If you're a follower of Jesus, you don't get a hall pass on this because you're someone. Because you're someone's literal physical neighbor, because you're someone's brother or sister or son, because you're someone's coworker, you're someone's roommate. You and I, we are someone. And the stakes are high. You know that they're high because you're a rubbernecker. You pay attention to the stuff that's going on. Maybe you have a coworker right now that's going through a divorce or is just got a cancer diagnosis, or maybe their kid's just a punk or whatever the thing is. And you know it. But are we, as followers of Jesus, doing anything about it? I know that I'm sure not all the time. And so here's really my question for you that I would love for you to marinate on is, what if someone's faith was dependent on your faithfulness? What if someone's faith story, their relationship with Jesus was dependent on your faithfulness to the harvest, to the Great Commission, right? If you're a follower of Jesus, all of us, we don't get a hall pass on this. This isn't something for Jason and I to do, and we build buildings and we do the thing, and you just like, here's $20, make sure people know Jesus. No. Anthem Church is you. You are the local church, and we believe here at Anthem that the local church is the hope of the world. You are the hope of the world. And so what if someone's faith was dependent on your faithfulness? And I get it. You might say, hey, I don't know enough. I'm still questioning some of this. I feel like I believe fully about Jesus, but don't have all the answers. I haven't really figured it out. Or man, I'm really struggling in this season right now. I've got this sin in my life that I don't quite know what I'm doing with right now. I get it. He didn't call you to be perfect. He called you just to be faithful to the harvest that he's put before you. If you were sitting on the edge of that town under a tree with Jesus, and he said, hey, I want you to look up from your sandwich and look at the Samaritans that are coming, who would that be for you? Have you been faithful to them? I know I sure haven't all the time. Not even just the Samaritans in your life. Some of you haven't even shared your story of life change with your closest friend. And you've missed the opportunity so far to inspire them to follow Jesus. You don't have to have all the answers. The Samaritan woman didn't either. Look back at John 4:28. This is what the Samaritan woman did after her encounter with Jesus. Then, leaving her water jar, the Samaritan woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. She was still questioning in her own way. Could this be the Messiah? They came out of the town and made their way toward him. What we see from the Samaritan woman is not all the right answers, but a willingness to just say, come and see. Hey, I just want to share my story with you. I know you got this thing going on. I feel like I'm supposed to tell you about this. You know, I know you just got this cancer diagnosis thing. I've been through that with both of my parents. Let's talk about it. I don't know what that is for you, but it's your opportunity to come and see. Come and see my story. Come and see what God has done in my life, in your life. Come and check out Anthem. Come and check out these irresistible environments that I get to be a part of week in and week out. Because you and I need to do this, and here's why. It's because we know that the best way for someone to know God is to first know someone who knows God. But here's the thing that we know about the harvest is that it's going to cost us something. The harvest always costs us something, right? When you think about what the future would look like if you were going to actually be for your neighbors, it's going to come at a cost, not just a financial cost, but it's also going to come at a cost of your comfortability probably. Sometimes it's hard to share our story. Sometimes it's hard to talk about our faith even. So yeah, the harvest, being an irresistible person, an irresistible church is probably going to cost you a little bit of comfortability. But here's the thing I don't want us to miss. And Jason talked about this last week. For God so loved the world that he sent Jesus. For God so loved your neighbor, whoever that is, whether it's your closest friend who is your neighbor or your worst enemy who is your neighbor, he sent you. And it's going to cost you something because the harvest costs us something. It might cost you comfortability. In this season, we're asking you to join in with the mission and vision of our church. We're asking you to be a part of preparing while we celebrate the current harvest to get ready for the next one, because that's what good farmers do. You might not know this, but I guess you're a farmer all of a sudden in this metaphor. Jason's asked us to participate 100% in giving financially to this church, to what God's doing, to fund the mission and vision so that 2 to 3 or 4 years from now, we can celebrate a totally new harvest. I want you to be a part of it. And I just want you to know our staff has gone first. 100% of our staff is participating financially in this campaign. And I'll be just vulnerable and honest with you. My wife and I, we're like, we don't even know how we're going to do this. Some of you notice we're going through all this infertility stuff right now. It is so expensive. I can't even begin to explain to you how expensive infertility treatment is. But the harvest is worth it because someone did it for me, right? This place is why I'm following Jesus today. So who am I not to invest deeply to? The cost is worth it. So Ashley and I, we just go, you know what? We already give 10% every month. We're going to figure out how to double it, and that's what we're going to do for the next 2 years. And I have no idea how we're going to do it. But I'm pumped to be a part of the harvest. I want to invite you into it too. I'm going to invite the band out right now as they prepare to sing this song for us. We'll bring them out. And I stumbled onto this song a couple years ago, and when I first listened to the lyrics, it messed me up. You ever listen to a song that just it leaves a pebble in your shoe, and it just keeps popping in your head? This song was that for me. And as we wrap up today, as you think about what it looks like to be for your neighbors, what it looks like to maybe move from being a bystander to being a part of this local church, I just want the words of these songs to sit with you. And so I'm actually going to read them really quickly to set up the band. These are some of the words to this song. See if they sound kind of familiar to you. When our homes are hit by heartbreak, let your presence meet us there. When the pain seems overwhelming, we hold on to you. When the streets are torn by chaos, we, the local church, you and I, we will be your hands and your feet. When the darkness brings division, may we be your light. What does this sound familiar? When the nations ache from violence, we will be your blessed peace. And when the headlines scream injustice, may we shout your name. The chorus of this song, because we know our world needs Jesus. We know that our world needs freedom. So give us eyes to see the hurting and the broken, our neighbors, and let our lives align with every word that you say. And here's you are the answer, Jesus. You're someone. And I promise you, somebody's faith, somebody's story is dependent on your faithfulness to just be you. But be the you that's inspiring people to follow Jesus. And maybe, just maybe, a couple years from now, we'll be celebrating a harvest that you got to be a part of. That you got to see God do something incredible because of your faithfulness to a call that he placed on your life way before you were ever born. Would you pray with me? Jesus, this is hard, and it's so overwhelming because we're busy, right? We have so much going on, and there's so much going on in the world, and sometimes we just don't know what to do. So God, we need your help. We need your help to see our neighbors differently, to see our stories differently, to see our faith journey differently, and to be willing to leverage who we are and what we have to be a part of the harvest, to be a part of your story of redemption. And it's going to cost us something. God, help us to not be afraid of investing in our neighbors, the next generation in the world. You've called us to do it. All we have to do is follow you. God, I'm so excited for what our church is going to be able to do as a result of being irresistible and inspiring people to follow Jesus. God, help us to be those types of people because we know that our world needs you because I need you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.